Welcome to the Inland Valley Storytellers monthly story swap meeting. My name is John St. Clair, and I'm your Zoom host and the leader of the Inland Valley Storytellers. We are going to start with our first story tonight, being told by Ron Evans.
John, thank you. It seems that most stories have a beginning and a middle and an end, but not all of them have a title. I'm always curious about what the title of a story will be, particularly the stories that I'm going to tell. Does it need to have such a label? And I think this one does. And so perhaps a very personal ID would be the suitable title. Now, I think that you all know that Ed Dunkley is, just a fine farmer. Everybody in Northville, Vermont knows this because, of course, he's lived there almost all of his life. I think that you probably also know that he milks 32 fine Guernseys. There are 38 in the herd, but 32 is a rough average of the milk. That's twice a day, of course. He was, again, something that everybody in town knows, but people don't tend to talk about it very much because when you know something and everybody knows it, it's why bother. But I think that you may not know that when he graduated from high school, I think it was in 1943, he went to the recruiting office up in Burlington right away day after I think graduation, and volunteered and was in the Army for the duration of the 39-45 war. Most people know that. He doesn't talk about it, but sort of that's one of the things. I mean, his name is on the board of the town hall, people who served in various wars of the nation. And I think most people know, too, that about every 3 days, the milk truck from Dean's Dairy comes by his dooryard and picks up the milk in the milk cans. It's Class A milk. Take it away. And then about every other week, I think on Thursday, second and third Thursday, the man who picks up the milk drops off a check. And then the next day, twice a month, Ed takes the check into town and deposits the check and gets some cash so that Mary can do her marketing for them for the next couple of weeks down at the A&P. Everybody knows that. So you don't have to make any fuss of it, but I'm not sure that you've been there for a while, so I want to make sure you were up to date. Now, it seemed on one occasion when he came by to deposit the check and to then get some cash in response, he was surprised to find that Mrs. Wilson, who's usually the teller, was not there, and a very attractive young woman was there at the till in her place. Someone, Ed's first thought was, he thought she was a little bit young to have that kind of responsibility. And he stepped up and said, what do you want to do? And his money, they're checking. And she said, do you have your identification? And he said, no, do I need? She said, oh, yes, you need to have your bank card for identification. And he said, well, I don't mean to be rude, but I've been banking here for years. Why do I need it? And she said, well, we just need to know who you are. I don't have your card, and I don't know what to do. Well, I'm afraid I can't help you until you have your card. Said, Mary's over next block, but one. I'll go over to the A&P where she's shopping. She probably has a card, so I'll go over there. And so he started to do that. As he passed by the center of and there's a big desk, and that's where Lentz Jerzyk has his sort of office. He's a vice president. You know, everybody who works at a bank, you're either a teller or a vice president. He was one of the vice, been there for years. And again, everybody knows that. And they know that he has a rather interesting history. But he was born of Polish parents in Great Britain. And then I think in 1938 was the birth date. And then his parents wanted to take him back to Poland, where their family home was, to introduce the baby to all of the relatives, and did. And it was a hard time, and things went from bad to worse. And I don't want to go into all the details, but the whole family ended up, of course, in Auschwitz. And at the end of the war, Lenz was the only one to survive. He always had bad eyesight, but he was good at arithmetic. In fact, his father taught at one of the schools in Great Britain and taught mathematics. And so Lenz was very, very good at arithmetic. And I think the thing that really was the greatest puzzle was that when he was able to get out of Auschwitz, of course, that was a terrible loss in every way for him, for his family, and a terribly traumatic event. And I think that he was taken to Great Britain or some aid agency, whatever it was. And finally, eventually came to this country, adopted by a family in Vermont, and eventually went to college and studied accounting. And that's how he became the vice president of the bank. Now, everybody knows this in a way. You just don't talk about it. You sort of know everybody. You know their backstory, and there you are. But there's one thing that the people didn't know about Ed. And that is, they knew that he served in the army. And they knew, some knew, that he survived the Battle of the Bulge. What they didn't know was that on the day, 1945, when the Allied troops got to Auschwitz, he was there when the doors were. People don't know because he just doesn't talk about that. I think Mary knows about it. I don't think his children, and I'm sure his grandchildren. That's the fact of the matter. He never talks about it. Ed was on the way out the door, or to the door, when he went by Vets. Because if he'd been there, he would have just said, because of course everybody knows him, he's the vice president of the bank, and said, I don't have my card, maybe we can help with this. But he was busy occupying somebody else, I think, with the safe deposit boxes or something like that. So he wasn't right there at the desk, and it gave a very positive note. Well, this is the new regulation. Of course, I'll just go see if I can find Mary. He got to the door and stopped, just dead stop, because he saw in the glass door, he could clearly see his own reflection. And he said, yeah, it's me. and so he was so pleased with that we started back. And then by this time, Lenz had come to his desk and he was laughing. So Ed said, how are you? Ed said, well, I wasn't very good. Ed said, well, I figured it all out and now I'm okay. What do you mean? He told him about the bank. Lenz said, that's, I'm sorry about that, but yes, it's one of the new regulations that come down from Burlington, people who own the bank. And so let me introduce you to Miss Jennings, a lovely young woman who's a new teller. She'll help you out. Well, I was just there. And so, well, let me introduce you formally. And so he went behind his hill and introduced Ed to Miss Jennings, and she apologized. And he said, no apology necessary, regulations and regulations, and made out the card and all the rest of it. And gave the card to Lenz to give to Ed. And everybody kind of saw what was going on, and everybody knows everybody knows everything, knows everybody's business, and that's fine. But one thing they didn't see, was Lenz, as he handed the bank identification card or notification card or identity card to Ed, he just automatically, I don't think he knew it himself, just sort of touched his left arm with his right fingers. I think that he's done that every time that anybody asks anything about a personal identification. Why? because that's where the 7 letters, the texture in bizarre and other nonsense, still can be seen today. I hope that we never get to that point.
Thank you, Ron. I hope so too. Good story. All right, so I'll tell my story.
Please.
And some of you have heard this several times, but it's a folk tale from India, and it's called The Witch of Kamalalaya. The village of Kamalalaya lays at the foot of the mighty Himalayan mountains. And long, long ago in this village, there lived an old woman who the ignorant villagers called a witch. She wasn't really a witch. She had no magical powers, but she was wise and she had common sense and she knew the ways of healing with herbs. And the people of the village were suspicious of her. And because of the villagers' taunts and slander, the old woman decided to move out of the village and live by herself up in the foothills, in the forest, in a small cabin. Now, also in this village of Kamalalaya, almost all of the families had sheep. And most of the families had a young son or daughter who would care for the family's sheep. Kiernan was one such young boy. And the people of the village generally thought of Kiernan as a conscientious shepherd. He took care of his family's sheep, took them up to graze and brought them back, and was very conscientious. Well, one day, Kiernan went up into the hills and he found a new spot. And it was really just perfect because it was kind of like a valley. On one side, there were these steep cliffs. And on the other side, there was a stream. So the sheep would be kind of contained between the cliffs and the stream. And it had lots of wonderful green grass for them to graze on, and of course, water from the stream to get a drink from. And so once the sheep were happily grazing, Kiernan sat down in the shade of a tree and started playing his flute. Well, that afternoon, when it was time to take the sheep back, Kiernan stood up and he took his staff and he pounded it on a rock 3 times. That was the signal to the sheep that it was time to go home. And so the sheep sort of started wandering towards him, and he started counting them because he had to count them every time to make sure he went back with the same number he arrived with. And this time he was missing 1. And he knew right away it was probably one of the young lambs that had just been born 3 or 4 weeks before. And so he started looking around and pounding his stick and calling. He couldn't find the lamb anywhere. So he decided he'd take the flock home and come back and look for the lamb. So he took the flock home, secured them in the village, and then talked to his friends who also were shepherds, and got a couple of the boys to come with him to help find the missing lamb. So he led them back to the place where the sheep had been that day, and all the boys were calling, playing their flutes, banging their sticks, to no avail. And then one of the boys said, look up there on top of the cliff. There was the little lamb eating the golden yellow flowers that the sheep love to graze on. And so they started yelling at their top of their lungs to try to get the attention, but the little lamb was blissfully eating and didn't pay any attention to them at all. Was absolutely oblivious to their attempts to get its attention. So this was a problem. See, Kiernan knew if they couldn't get that little lamb down before dark, it probably would not survive the night. It would most likely fall prey to some predator. And he knew how important the sheep were to his family. And he loved all the sheep, especially the silly little lambs. And he saw no way out of this, and he was so frustrated, he just started to cry. Well, one of the boys said, "Hey, Kiernan, I have an idea. Why don't you go to the old witch that lives in the forest and ask her to use her magic to get the lamb down?" And Kiernan stopped crying. He said, "That's a wonderful idea. Why didn't I think of that? Let's all go to the witch and get her help." And the other boy said, "Oh, no. We're not going anywhere near that witch. She might turn us into a toad or a frog. No. The lamb is yours, your problem. We're out of here." And they took off, leaving poor Kiernan by himself. Now, it just so happened that at that moment, the lamb became aware that it was by itself and started bleating pitifully. And Kiernan knew he had to do something and decided to risk it all. He was going to run by himself to the old woman's cabin and ask for her help. So he went running fast as he could. He knocked on her door when he got there, and the door wasn't shut tight, and he was knocking so hard it kind of swung open just a little bit, and he could see the old woman was sleeping on a mat on the floor. And so he called out, old Mother Witch, wake up, please help me." Well, that woke her up, but she was not happy for two reasons. One, her nap was being disturbed, and secondly, she did not like being called Old Mother Witch. So she looked at Kiernan, and her anger quickly faded away when she saw this boy with tear-streaked cheeks, obviously very frightened and in despair. And she said, "How can I help you, my son?" And so Kiernan explained the situation to her, how the lamb was up on the cliff. He didn't know how to get her down. And he asked her, "Would you please use your magic to get the lamb down?" And the old woman laughed. "I don't have any magic," she said, "but I think I can help you." And so she went and she got a rope and she tied a noose on one end, handed it to Kiernan, and she got 3 strips of cloth and handed that to Kiernan. And she said, "Take me to the lamb." So he guided her back to the meadow, and they got there, and the lamb was still up there, bleating pitifully, all alone. And so the old woman looked up there, and she looked to one side, looked to the other side, and she said, "Well, one thing for sure, I know that lamb did not get up there from here. We have to find how the lamb got up there. And I think it's probably this way." So they walked along the side of the cliff for a while, and sure enough, after a while, they came to a place where there was a very narrow path that wound its way up. And so she said to Kiernan, "Give me those things you have and follow that path and see if it leads to where the lamb is. If it does, and you see you have a clear path to the lamb, come back down here and I'll explain what you're to do." And so Kiernan went up this steep, winding dirt path, and sure enough, it led up to the top of the cliff, and he could see the lamb there. So he came back down. And then the old woman said, "Now listen very carefully." She handed the rope to him, and she said, "You are to go very slowly towards the lamb. If it notices you, talk in soothing ways so you don't frighten the lamb. We don't want it to run away or run off the cliff. And when you get to the lamb, put this noose over the lamb's neck, tighten it a little, not too much, and tie the other end around you so if it tries to run, it can't get him. And then she handed him the 3 pieces of cloth, and she said, take one piece of cloth and use it as a blindfold and put it over the lamb's eyes because we don't want the lamb seeing what's going to happen. And then take the other 2, one of them, and tie the 2 back legs together, and then the other one tie the 2 front legs together, and then lean down and get under the lamb and lift it up onto your shoulders with the feet hanging down in front. Then walk back towards the path. And this is the hard part. You've got to concentrate because the lamb is not going to be comfortable being carried around like that. Fortunately, it won't really see what's happening because you blindfolded it. But still, it might be making noises and struggling a little. You've got to block that out and concentrate on finding good handholds and good footholds for getting down that steep path. So, it's not going to be easy, but you are a brave young man, and you are strong, and I know you can do it. Do you understand what you have to do? And Kiernan shook his head. Yes. And so he went up the path. He approached the lamb very gently, got the noose over it, tied the rope around himself, put the blindfold on, tied up the front legs and the back legs, and then went down underneath and lifted the lamb up onto his shoulders with the legs hanging down here and tied the lamb securely onto him. And then went towards the path. And when he got to the top of the path, he got really scared because it was a steep path. But then he remembered what the old woman said, that he was strong and he was brave and he could do it. And to concentrate on good handholds and good footholds. And he did that and he made it all the way down. Well, when he got there, the old woman helped get the lamb off of his back, and they untied the legs and took the blindfold off, and she gave him a big hug, and she said, I am so proud of you. You are so brave. You are as brave as any soldier on a battlefield. I am so proud of you. And so Kiernan felt pretty good. And the 2 of them started walking home. Now, by this time, it was actually quite dark. And by the time they got back to the village, everyone was asleep. All the lights were off except for Kiernan's house. Still had the light on because his mother was worried about him. And as they approached the house and got close, he turned to thank the old woman, but she had slipped away without his nose. So he took the lamb and secured the lamb with the other sheep and then went inside and got a big hug from his mother and told her the whole story. And then he said, you know what, Mother? I'm ashamed at how we treated that old woman. She's no witch. She didn't use any magic. She's just really smart, and she encouraged me. She told me how to do it and was so supportive. I'm ashamed at how badly we treated her. And so Kiernan went to bed, and the next morning news spread throughout the village as to what had happened. And Kiernan wanted to go back to thank her. He never really got to thank her because she slipped away when they got into the village. And so he wanted to return the rope and the pieces of cloth and really formally thank her. And when the other villagers found out that he was planning on going in to the forest to her cabin, some of them, not all of them, but some of them, when they heard that story, they too felt ashamed and they wanted to apologize. And so they followed Kiernan back to the cabin. And Kiernan's mother went too, because she wanted to thank the woman for helping her son. And when they got there, he knocked on the door, she opened the door, and he said, I'm returning these, and I just wanted to thank you so much for helping me. And then the people of the village that came with him were standing behind, and one of them said, and we want to apologize for how badly we treated you in the past and invite you to come back and live in the village. And Kieran's mother said, "We have an extra room in our house. You could stay with us." Now, the old woman did not really like living by herself in the forest, and so she was happy to accept this generous offer from Kieran's mother. And she went back into the village, and there were a number of villagers who were then receptive to learning from her. She really did have a lot of wisdom, and she taught them some of the ways of healing with herbs and shared her wisdom. There were still some villagers who didn't like her at all and were suspicious of her, but the majority of them really had accepted her. And so through her teachings, she helped guide those people away from the darkness of ignorance, fear, and hate, and towards the light of common sense, wisdom, and love, the witch of Kamala.
Oh.
Do you want a chair to sit in while you
Oh, I might, yes, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, yes. Let's
Thank
do that.
you.
And that way I can
Yeah.
position it right to where you will show. Have a seat.
Oh, thank you, and I'll try not to walk.
I think that'll have you. Yeah, maybe back just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Try that. Yeah, you show up.
Is that good?
Yeah, and I'll move this a little bit. So. That's good.
My name is Anne Freeman, and I love storytelling more than anything else. I love hearing stories. I was a elementary school librarian, and also a botanical librarian. And I learned a lot of flower lore, plant lore. And as I grew up, I haven't grown up yet. But as I got a little bit older, I learned that there were stories in everything, including Chinaware. One of my very favorite Chinaware stories is the Blue Willow pattern. Now, this is based on a Chinese motif, but the actual pattern in the Chinaware was designed and created by English men. The story goes, many years ago, there was a mandarin who lost his wife, but she left him with the most beautiful, beautiful daughter. Well, a lot of the villagers were very interested in his daughter, but he wanted to protect her and make sure that she married into wealth and that she was well groomed for that occasion. So we bought a little island surrounded by water, and he built a beautiful pagoda. He hired an accountant to help him count his coins and his money. And he went into the village, but he never took daughter with him. Well, daughter eventually became very sort of romantically interested in the young accountant named Chang. And they would meet often. He would play the flute for her. And he too was very interested in this beautiful young woman. But while in town, the father found a very wealthy mandarin, and he talked him into marrying the daughter, totally unseen, just rumors of her beauty. So it was arranged by a handshake and a small exchange of coins. So the wedding plans were being made. The daughter was not yet informed. She was still in love with Chang, the accountant. But when the story came out that father had made these arrangements, she knew that she and Chang had to somehow or another escape. Father then increased the surveillance on the young daughter to make sure this wouldn't happen. So he fired Chang and told him, out of my kingdom, out. Chang reluctantly left, but he built a small boat, and he would float the little boat past the mandarin's castle and play the flute so that the young woman would know that he was still there and he would wait forever for her. So they secretly agreed to meet where they had always met and decided that they would elope. She went back to the pagoda, took the money that had been left by the wealthy older man, I should say, and met Chang by his boat. But in order to get to the boat, they had to cross this little bridge and get inside the boat. And as they were rowing away, the Mandarin saw his daughter. He grabbed a couple of men, including the wealthy merchant, and they started running over the bridge, the father with a whip from the willow branch in his hand, whipping away, trying to get his daughter. Come back, come back. But Chi and Chang were on a mission. They got into the boat, and they rowed safely away up into this little island, where there was a little house waiting for them. The Mandarin was absolutely furious. He just could not believe that would happen to his daughter. He started gathering the forces to come and get them. He had no idea which island they would be at. So he rowed and he rowed and he rowed. And he finally saw a little house, and he could hear his daughter singing. They threw torches at the little house, and it started burning down. And neither the daughter nor Chang survived. But the gods took pity on them and turned them into doves, where they forever fly together in the sky, and their love remained forever and ever.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Lovely, lovely.
Oh, thank you. Oh, it's that. Thank you. Had 4 eye surgeries, each one is made by vision of the worst.
You have a story?
Yeah.
Ron, how nice to see the photos of your party.
Well, maybe one of these years you
One
can
of
do
these
it.
years, I'm on hospice duty, but I'm always so pleased that you do this.
And you can hitch a ride with us.
Yeah, anyway, thought into Amalfi and the Silver Span. It's a combination of 2 legends folk tales out of Hungary. And I haven't told it in a while, so hopefully we will.
Take one step back, I think, so you're more in the light.
Oh, yeah, you know what? That's more like it.
Yeah.
Amalfi had a problem. He was one of the young people in his village, but there was a limited number of young ladies, and they had all already sort of made their choices amongst the very limited number of young men. And so he knew he would have to find a way to build a life, but he could not do it in his home village. So he gathered his life savings. He bought the traditional 8 seed cakes and the traditional precious flagellate of ruby red. And he set out. He had other provisions, of course, but it took him longer to find his way down from High Mountain than he had thought it would. It was running low on food, and as he was walking along the awakening forest of spring, he opened one of his seed cakes. He'd been listening to the birds. But as he opened the seed cake, some seeds fell upon the ground. And as he walked along, suddenly there was no bird singing. He turned around and he saw the birds fighting over the few seeds that had been dropped. He thought, they must be starving. It's the end of winter. And he broke apart the rest of that seed cake as he walked along and scattered it for the birds. But there were more birds coming, and more birds, and more birds. And slowly he opened all of his seed cakes and gave them to the birds as he was going along. He came out and to see a broad river below. And he thought, I will be able to walk along that river. I will find a place that has people. I will make myself useful, and someone will give me a chance. Maybe I can find a wife. We'll see how this goes. And so he went on down. He got down to the river's bed and he looked. Do I go down river or up river? He could see nothing either direction. He thought for a few minutes and thought, if I have to cross the river, I'd better do it up. So I will turn up. So he turned upriver. And as he did, the weather turned for the worse. The afternoon grew colder and windier. Suddenly there were storm clouds rapidly approaching. The rain fell hard, the air was cold, and he began to think, I must find a place for at least some shelter for the night. Hopefully the storm won't last too long. He found a great boulder and went around it, and there was an incline under it, an opening somewhat, not a cave, just a place where the river had once worn away the rock and left an area. And he crawled to the very back of it. And as he did, he realized he was not alone. There was a flash of lightning. And he realized that he was sharing his little shelter with a very old, decrepit-looking man who was sitting there shivering. Well, there was nothing for it. He reached into his now almost empty backpack, pulled out his cordial of precious cherry wine, opened the top, and gave the old man a sip to warm him, and took one for himself. They spoke not at all, but through the night, sip by sip by sip, finally the cordial was empty, but they had survived the night. The old man simply turned and walked downriver. Malfoy thought, what must I do? The old man turned and said, you must be careful. There are 7 villages along the river ahead, but they are on the other side. There is a bridge in one of them, but it's a long way off. There's a silver span not far away, but you must not use it. But why not? It is guarded by a demon, and if you set foot upon his bridge, he may destroy you. Well, Amalfi walked along, and it wasn't that much further when he saw a beautiful bridge, seemingly made out of a single band of silver. And he thought, I am cold and very hungry, and I do not know how far I will have to go. I wonder if I dare use the bridge. He sat down beside the bridge. He took off his shoes, took off his socks, stockings, and very, very slowly and carefully began to work his way up across the bridge. And when he reached its crown, suddenly, there was the demon! He said, I mean you no harm. I mean you no harm. No harm will come to you by my hand, said the demon. I was one of the birds who were feeding the forest. And I was the old man last night who you shared your last cordial with. I know what you're doing. You're looking for a wife. And if you follow my advice, you will get a good one. There are 7 villages going up to the end of the river here. You must walk straight through the first 6, looking neither left or right. Speak to no one at all. When you reach the 7th village, walk slowly past the first 6 houses. And at the 7th house, you will find what you are looking for. Well, why would he refuse to do these things? He set out at a brisk pace that slowed down as he got hungrier and tireder, but still, late in the afternoon, he had found the sixth village and was hurrying on toward the seventh. Hey, he found the seventh village. He saw the first house. He staggered past it, and his energy began to get better. He moved a little further forward, and he began to feel stronger. By the time he got to the fifth house, not only was his legs feeling energetic, his backpack was getting heavy. As he crept past the sixth, the backpack became such a burden he wasn't sure he could make it to the seventh door. But when he knocked on the seventh door, the head man of the village came forward and said, "What are you doing in my village? I've come to seek my fortune and perhaps a bride." "Have you seed cakes?" Well, I don't know what's in my backpack." They opened the backpack, and there was not 7 seed cakes, but perhaps 70 or 770. It seemed like the backpack just exploded outward with seed cakes. And he reached in and pulled out not one precious vial of cherry cordial, but bottle after bottle after bottle. Hey. The headman called to his daughters, who all came out. Hey. And he said, "One of you may be this man's bride, perhaps. What do you think?" 6 of the girls had their eyes only on the piles of bread. 6 of the girls, 3 of the girls, had their eyes on the fortune. The one seemed to be smiling shyly. He walked to her, the youngest daughter, and said, "I am called Amalfi. I am called, what are you? Got 3 long names. 3 long names, but I am called a Dalinka." And at that, Amalfi explained. For Dalinka means wise and beautiful daughter. He said, "I have come a long way. Perhaps we could build a life together." She looked at him and his obvious indifference to his great wealth, and the smile at the corner of his eyes, and thought, "I could love this man." And so the wedding began, and quite a feast it was, and people came from far away, and everyone had all the bread they could eat and all the cherry cordial they could drink. But after 3 days, all that ended. Amalfi, with gifts from the whole village, and his beautiful bride, Dalinka, headed off toward his home village. As they were walking along, he said, "Perhaps we should have gone across the bridge on the other side, but I don't know that path, and many of these people have been kind to us. We'll go through the 6 villages, and then we'll find a way back across the river toward my home." And so they did. But when he got past this 6th village, he said, "Now, there's a dangerous bridge ahead of us. It is manned by a demon. I do not know what will happen if we come to it. Do you want to chance that, or shall we keep going downriver until we find a safe way to cross and come back? With you, my husband, we will face whatever danger there may be." And so they approached the edge of the silver bridge. They took off their shoes and socks, set down their backpacks, and slowly, hand in hand, began to creep up the bridge. And out came the demon. And he wasn't scary. There was a great smile upon his face. He said, "Oh, Amalfi, Dalinka, thank you for coming and doing everything exactly as directed. I have a gift for you. You see these 7 fat piglings over here? You may take them and go with you to your village. But if you accept my gift, you also accept my challenge. On the 7th day of the 7th month, from this moment at the 7th hour, I shall appear to you and ask you 7 questions. If you answer them correctly, you may keep the pigs and my blessing. But if you fail, 7 years of misery will follow you." They looked at each other and smiled and said, "We will take the pigs." And so, driving the pigs before them, they slowly approached his village. And the days went quickly. they'd gotten some things that they were able to sell. They were building a nice little home for themselves. Life was looking pretty good, but the days ticked by. The seventh month finally came, and then the seventh day, Anika said, he will be here soon. What will we do? We will trust to our wisdom and the pureness of our love. At exactly 7 minutes past the seventh hour, the demon appeared at their door. I said, "Are you ready for my questions?" I'm awfully not. The demon held up one finger and said, "One! What do you say to one?" He hesitated only a moment and said, "One is like the sun. We have but one sun to show us the wonders of the world." The demon nodded his head. He said, "What do you say to two? What do you say to two?" Hey, a man, a woman, hey, our family. And a family is beginning of all. Three. What do you say to three? A man, a woman, and a child make a family. And we have not yet been blessed with that. Four. What do you say to four? Your wagon must have four wheels if you expect it to work. Five. What do you say to five? Four fingers and a thumb make a hand, and a hand may hold a sword to destroy or a hammer to build. Six. What do you say to six? If you have but 5 hens, do not expect 6 eggs. Again, you do it. 7. What do you say to 7? Mommy said, a family with 7 fat pigs need never borrow from another. You have answered my questions perfectly. My blessing is upon you. And 7 years of blessings went upon them. Children came, pigs multiplied, crops grew. And you know, to this very day, the name Amalfi means good fortune.
Oh.
Thank you, Ron. That was wonderful. It's been a few years since I've heard that one.
I don't know why, it just sort of came to mind as I was coming over here tonight.
Yeah, it's a great story. It was a joy to hear it again after so long. Well, do you have a story? Okay, so I think that's all the stories for tonight. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to tell you that I have not been able to set a date for our spring concert yet because I have these other commitments with Sierra Club and I haven't been able to set those dates yet. I want to do that first so there's no conflict. But I'm looking at possibly April 18th. Are you back east then? When are you gone?
From about the 14th on,
Till when?
until I come back from Great Britain.
Oh, so that may be a while.
Probably the end of middle of May, maybe latter part of May.
Okay.
But I'm very happy to be involved. I'm not the king.
Yeah. Well, we always love to have you with us telling stories, but like I say, I haven't been able to pick a date yet. Ron, what about you?
Well,
Is your calendar filling up?
yeah, I got my calendar up. Yeah. I'll come up with the name of the storytelling group I've been with for a gajillion years, the moment now. Anyways, South Coast Storytelling Group has put it tentatively for Saturday, April 25th.
I thought it was firm.
Okay, well, anyway, that's the plan. It's on my calendar.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew that that date was already taken. I thought it would have been nice to have ours the week before we could advertise the other.
Oh, So you're not talking stories, like you're talking about a spring concert.
Yeah, the spring concert.
Yes, I think doing that a week before would be a good thing. We should make it on the 18th.
Are you free then?
I am free.
Yeah, I can check with the other four storytellers that perform with us and see if that's available. If not, we'll find some other date. But anyway, that's what's in the works, and it's up in the air at this point. I just kind of thought having our spring concert the week before the Southern California Story Swap Festival would work out well. We could advertise for the next week event and have 2 Saturdays in a row with stories. So anyway, I think I'll end the recording. Ina, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, I think you're muted. Unmute yourself. I saw your mouth moving.
I was saying thank you for all the stories. I enjoyed them, including yours. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, you're very welcome. You're very, very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.